Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Chicanery. We are your hosts. I am Danny, and we have JT.
Hello once again.
And so this is sports car bonanza extravaganza. I need to come up with new material because I feel like I've used that a couple of times. But at any rate, this is kind of we're doing kind of back to back. We had IMSA at Laguna Seca, and then we had WEC at Spa for the 6 hour race. And certainly, if you watched Spa, then you know that there was a lot that came out of this race. So I suppose without further ado, let's get into it.
Hey, folks, what's going on? It's your favorite, Carl, from the Victory Lane Vibes crew, taking a little bit of time out of our show here to talk to you about something that's really important. It's the month of May, which only means one thing. You guessed it, it's my birthday. Actually, that's not what I'm here to talk to you about, but keep that in mind. With it being the month of May, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, racing events in North America, heck, even the globe, takes place right in Indianapolis. That's right, I'm talking about the Indianapolis 500 taking place at the end of this month. And so there would be no better way to kick off the month leading up to one of the biggest racing events in North America than with our good friends over at Homefield Apparel. Now, if you don't know who Homefield is, they are a vintage collegiate apparel design company. They've got merchandise for over 80 collegiate sports teams, and this year they've gotten into the world of motorsports. Now, earlier this year they kicked it off with the Hendrick Motorsports collection that's still on their website. Go ahead and check it out. But this month they're launching the Indy 500 collection, and they have some stout pieces. Let me tell you, they launched it last week. I went ahead, I rushed over to the website. I got the 1969 Indy 500 trucker hat, which I had to have, of course, because I'm a trucker. They have all sorts of great pieces, great designs, and great quality. That's one of the best parts about what Homefield does, right? It's not copy and pasted. It's not some, snatched off of Google Images or anything like that. These are authentic and original designs done to the highest of quality. And the best part is they ain't gonna break the bank either. Like sometimes you get this vintage apparel from these places, you're spending $50, $60, $70. At Homefield, you're not gonna break the bank. They got a website and a mobile app you can check out. Now that website is homefieldapparel.com. You can go over there, you can view the Indy 500 collection, you can view the Hendrick Motorsports collection, you can even view all their other designs. It's all very easily laid out for you to see. They got really fast shipping too. Like I said, I just ordered that hat and it's on its way here. And hey, if you find something you like, you can actually use our code VLV24 for 15% off your first order. Again, that code is VLV24, and the website is homefieldapparel.com. They also have a mobile app in the App Store, whether it's Android or iOS. You can go and check them out. And hey, when you get it, tag us at Twitter, VLVPod. We would love to see what you got. Thank you guys so much, and enjoy the rest of the show.
So first, we are starting with Laguna Seca because that's the shorter one of the two. And getting into qualifying, it was actually pretty calm, pretty quiet, nothing particularly interesting. The uh, Wayne Taylor racing with Andretti. That is almost as bad as Visa Cash App Red Bull, if I'm being perfectly honest. But anyway, the Lamborghini was on pole for GTD. And what made my heart very happy was that the number 4 Corvette was on pole. But not only was the number 4 Corvette on pole for GTD Pro, but it was actually a Pratt Miller Corvette lockout because the number 3 was behind it for P2. And well, that just made my heart very full to see that little press blurb. And the '01 Cadillac was on pole for GTP. So it was actually kind of a fun pole, fun qualifying session. But as we go, kind of the customary question of good race or no.
I would say it was a decent race. I mean, there weren't too many things that happened. Like, it wasn't too crazy, but it was good.
Yeah, I would broadly, I would agree with that. Yeah, it wasn't massively active. The race itself. I mean, it's worth noting, you know, Laguna Seca is one of those circuits where, part as the cars have gotten a bit bigger, and the fact that Laguna Seca, well, hasn't, it can be a bit processional at times. Although I say that it was actually a late pass from Nick Tandy, which is what got the number 6 the win. But at any rate, but it can get a little bit processional at times. But Laguna Seca is actually one of my favorite circuits, full stop, ever. So I would be pretty hard pressed to not enjoy it to some extent. But at any rate, getting into sort of the details and minutia, we had a full course yellow from some debris on on the circuit, which was amusing.
At
Once
first, I thought
again,
the Mustang had lost another like part of the bodywork, but I don't think that happened this time.
no, it didn't. Unfortunately, it would have been so funny if it had. Um, Although, once again, we've talked about it before, full course yellows for, basically brought out for debris cautions. It's like, okay, yellows or just local yellows, please. This was another instance where I didn't really feel like it was super necessary. Now granted, Laguna Seca is certainly a smaller circuit, and so there's an argument to be made there, but again, I just think it's a bit silly. RLL continued to RLL with their pit stop strategy. I do not understand what is wrong with this team. It's like, it's like that meme where it's like, can you be normal for 5 seconds, please? And then it's just a kid in the back seat of the car just screaming. And that's what it feels like. It's like any time that you ask RLL and BMW to not do something just needlessly dumb. On track incidents are one thing, but it's like, stop botching pit stops and pit strategies, please. But apparently the answer to that question is no.
I
And
mean,
speaking of
we're
which,
4-0, 4-0 now.
God. Oh, sweet Christ.
I mean, at this point, I just wait for the tweet. Like, I just wait for somebody to tweet, "Oh, RLL has messed up strategy," or they did something, and I'm like, "Oh, there it is," and there it
Exactly.
is.
Yeah, and speaking of num RLL, the number 24 did a bit of off-roading and picked up one of the sponsor signs that are dotted about the sides of the track and drug it onto the circuit, which was amusing. I guess a bit of free airtime. I can't remember which sign they picked up, but point is a bit of additional free advertising. Not that it worked, because I don't remember who it was. um, And there was a bit of GTD and GTP beef, which always multi-class racing is always so funny. It's like, y'all are in different classes and you're beefing over the same bit of tarmac. Like, just get it together and it'll be fine. But it's a bunch of race car drivers. Apparently, that's too difficult. Because the Turner BMW and the number 40 Acura came together and banged doors in the closing stages of the race, which resulted in the BMW ending up off track. And the Turner Motorsports social accounts, particularly Twitter account, was not pleased at all. And like, trust me, to some extent I get it. We've talked about it before. The prototypes getting a bit sendy in places where they really shouldn't be. But also, you're the slower car. And generally, rules is that the slower car needs to kind of figure out where they're going. And it didn't seem like that really happened either. So that's one of those ones where it's a racing incident, but they're both at fault.
I mean, that's what I'm gonna say. I mean, I'm like, okay, I don't know why GTPs and GTDs are having beef. It's like, again, two different classes. And I don't know. Sure, like, yeah, GTP drivers need to, figure out ways to navigate around the GTD cars that are slower without, completely punting somebody and sending them to Mars. I get it. But at the same time, I mean, the GTDs do, I guess, have some responsibility. I mean, again, both parties I feel like are at fault. It's okay. It's
Yeah,
like the GTDs should not have been like all in the way, and the GTP drivers. I mean, I don't know. Surely, I mean, part of the problem is I'm sure they get impatient because the cars are slower, and if there's somebody behind them pressuring them, they're gonna get even more impatient, trying to get around. So
yeah. Again, it's and basically, once again, it's one of those times where it frustrates me a little bit that we don't do a video component because JT just kind of threw their hands up, and that's basically kind of that perfectly encapsulates how I was feeling. Kind of watching, not only watching this on track, but then it wasn't really even back and forth on socials, but just, clearly the Turner Motorsports admin he was going through it, or they were going through it.
tweeting through it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's just like, what do you want? It's like you're both dumb. I just, it's equal parts amusing and a little frustrating at times, to be perfectly honest. But speaking of frustration, I don't think there was a driver any more frustrated than Jack Aitken, unfortunately, because Action Express all but had this in the bag, and then Aitken got caught up in GTD traffic and ended up off track, and that is what allowed one Mr. Nick Tandy in the Porsche Penske to number 6 to sort of sneak through and snatch the lead, and that would go to an overall win, making it 100 sports car wins for Penske. The number 77 Porsche Rexy would win GTD Pro, and the 57 Windward Mercedes would win GTD. Um, yeah, it didn't go well basically for like anybody who was on pole. Did
Yeah,
not.
I'm not too sure what had happened with the '01 Cadillac, considering the fact that I think for at least the first half of the race, they were actually like pretty strong. Then they kind of just fell off. I mean, slowly fell through the field, and I don't really know what happened to them, other than I think it might have been something with their strategy, kind of tripped them up. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, because it is worth noting that the I didn't mention this earlier, but the '01 Cadillac, which put it on pole, absolutely demolished the track record for Laguna Seca. So that Cadillac had some pace, and it just didn't translate on race day at all. We've talked about it time and time and time again with the Corvettes and GTD Pro. Certainly Pratt Miller can do all the strategy they want. And they can even, it seems like the Corvettes are even getting to the point where they're quick enough to put up pole laps now. But they just over a race that these cars just do not have the pace. And Pratt and Miller can seventh dimensional backgammon strategy all they want. It doesn't matter when the car is just, well, frankly, is dog shit slow. And that's kind of what they're struggling with. Although, to be fair, they did convert it into a podium. So we are seeing some progress with this car.
I mean, they
And
would
as
have gotten the podium at the previous race or at Sebring had
mhm,
they not done whatever they did with the modifying the parts on the car and got shuffled back.
yes, and this is also true. If they had not uh, I wouldn't say purposely, because it seemed like there was a bit of a miscommunication between GM and IMSA with that one, given that all the Corvettes got in trouble for that, not just the factory cars. Um, yeah, but whatever happened, yeah, they probably would have been on track for a podium at Sebring, but that was just not quite how it panned out, unfortunately. But yeah, and like I said, I have bugger all clue. Same thing. It just seems like the Wayne Taylor Andretti Lambo just kind of sunk through the field slowly over the course of the race. So,
The Lambo.
well, I was just about to say the Lambos kind of do that anyway, but But at any race, yes, kind of fun, but ultimately kind of quiet. Laguna Seca for IMSA next round is Detroit, if I remember correctly, in a little less than a month's time. I guess to give just a little peek behind the current, curtain rather. I certainly did apply for media credentials. As of the time of this recording, that closes in 2 business days. We'll call it. It's the 17th. When it closes, and it is 8 o'clock on Tuesday the 14th. So we'll see. Either I got it or I didn't. Worst case scenario, I'll just buy tickets because the idea is to be downtown for the Grand Prix and have a bit of fun. But moving on to a race that was very not quiet. It was the 6 hours of Spa. And I guess that would have been Saturday morning for us dirty Americans, kind of middle of the day for everybody else. And first, because this is becoming kind of a customary segment, are adjustments to BOP. Or as very cheekily subheaded, Bop It, which I just think is so wonderful. I love it. It's great. So, first of all, WEC has not made reading these tables any less difficult. So, that's thing number one. Thing number two is that basically everybody except for the Cadillac got a weight increase. As little as a single kilogram for the Lamborghini, which I don't understand that. It's like, why? Why just one? It's like if the driver has had a heavy breakfast or not this morning would account for that weight increase. But that to as much as 12 kilos for the Ferrari, which is more significant. Although even then, still not a lot. 12 kilos. I mean, you're looking at about 30 pounds thereabouts. And it's also worth noting that this is dry weight, a dry weight increase. So I don't know what the practical real world, once you account, drivers, different weights, fuel loads, etc. I suspect the real world difference is not quite as significant as that. But also some horsepower adjustments as well. Basically, everybody lost a bit of power. Same thing. It was single digit changes. It was basically 1 or 2 horsepower across the board. Ferrari, it was 4. So I mean, sure. Or I'm sorry, and it's bloody kilowatts, so it's actually a little bit more than that. I forget that they do that. It's so annoying. So you're talking, I guess, about anywhere from about 4 to about 10 horsepower. Kilowatts to horsepower is a conversion rate that breaks my brain a little bit. Again, tweaks to max energy stint, blah blah, yada yada. So, but pretty incremental tweaks, I guess, is my broader point. To BOP for this, for GTP rather, or hypercar. Sorry. But as for the GT cars, same thing. It was all pretty incremental. The biggest thing is that there were some weight gains, some weight decreases, because again, it shifted and shuffled around a bit. Sort of depending on what you were doing. The Mustang actually lost some weight, which, given that it's the modern incarnation of the M8, effectively, just with a distinctive American accent, is not super surprising. It could stand to lose a bit of weight. But the Aston Martin got a 20 kilo weight adjustment, which is quite sizable. I know they had been showing some pace and were here in the recent races, and perhaps that had something to do with it. But yeah, that's just a little surprising. Corvette got a weight increase, which actually, funny enough, means that it's actually a couple kilos lighter than the Lexus, and they're kind of within the neighborhood for the heaviest cars in the field. So that's just interesting. And then you had the individual team breakdowns for weight ballast and whatever, but we will we'll skip that. Um, but anyway, as for qualifying sessions for the race, well, Mustangs go fast. I guess that's what happens when you lose a fair bit of weight. Um, the both GT3s just missed out on hyperpole. Um, One of the Lexuses made it, which is absolutely wild considering how gormless that team is any other time. But this is their first hyperpole this season. The the Manti Pure Racing, which is speaking of which, we've not talked about this. I would like to divert for a second just to talk about their team name. If that isn't like the most German attempt at trying to sound cool that I have ever heard. Manti Pure Racing. I'm hearing this in my brain in a thick German accent, and I'm groaning. But at any rate, it bended quite significantly with about 7 minutes left in uh Hyperpole. It was the number 92, basically lost it coming through Eau Rouge Radion, and ended up in the tire barriers, which we actually red flagged the session to replace that. You know, driver was fine. He was Alex was okay. He was cleared to participate in the race. It was a the car they had to switch to a backup chassis, is what I'm trying to say, as a direct result of this. But it ended in an Iron Dames pole for LMGT3, which nothing makes me happier than seeing the pink Lambo or Porsche on pole.
It's funny because Montai has like two teams in LMGT3. They have like there's the Montai Pure Racing, and then there's like the Montai EMA or whatever.
Yeah, it's exactly it. And I struggle to understand quite what the difference is, if I'm being perfectly honest.
I don't know. They just felt like having two teams for whatever reason. I have no idea.
Yeah, I guess so. But yes, it does make it and for, folks, certainly for those of you who listen to this show and don't understand why we go through such lengths to stress, pure racing, EMA, that's literally why. It's because if I just, say Montai, then, it's going to be like, well, there are two of them. Which one? I mean, now granted, through car numbers and some deductive reasoning, you could probably figure it out, but it's easier to just say so. But yes, moving on to hypercar quality, both the Porsche Penske's had a lockup at the beginning of the session because cold tires. BMW, one BMW makes it to hyperpole. Cadillac makes it to hyperpole. Both Peugeots miss out on hyperpole. I am so sick of this team; it is unreal. Alpine stopped on the track with about a minute left in the section. And it's so funny. I didn't realize that the for the Alpine that the engines were branded Mechachrome, because certainly for those of you who are anoraks about classic F1, after Renault left the full factory support in F1, the engines, I mean, to be fair, there were a few different names for the Renault engines, I guess late 90s, early 2000s, but they were called Mechachrome, and they were horrible. They were basically, I mean, you're talking early 2000s, and they were based on an engine design, granted lightly massaged, but from the 90s, so they weren't super reliable relative to the newer V10s. They also didn't make the power relative to the newer V10s. They were heavier. They were just bad engines. So it's hilarious that the engine goes pop, and then I go, oh, it's branded Mechachrome. I just think that is very, very funny. And just again, a little thing that I was unaware of. But yeah, Mechachrome engine go boom. So all is right with the world. Um, the Proton Porsche ended up qualifying fourth, which was fun. And here's where it gets a little bit squiffy. So initially, Antonio Fuoco had qualified the number 50 Ferrari on pole. Notice I said initially, because Ferrari was later stripped of said pole for being underweight. Apparently, the delta was pretty small. It was by less than a kilogram, which, for those of you, you're basically talking about 2 pounds, because 2.2 pounds is a single kilogram. Um, the team said, to its credit, said that it was unintentionally non-compliant with weight regs, and again, given that it is such a small delta, that's probably correct. But they were stripped of pole regardless. Rules are the rules, basically. Oh.
I mean, yeah,
Um,
so it's like something like, I don't know, like 10, 20 kilos or something. Then I'm like, okay, yeah, they definitely did it on purpose. But that small amount, I'm like, no, it was probably not intentional.
yeah, exactly. So I believe them. Um, but as a result, the number 5 Porsche Penske was effectively handed a pole position on a silver platter, and that also bumping the Cadillac up a position. So starting next to each other on the front row. And this marked the 100th pole position for Team Penske in sports cars. And it's funny, the notes, and I do completely agree with you, is that yes, the for BOP updates, I don't know. Do we need to, like, give Matt Campbell some ZQuil or something so he's just a little bit slower? I don't know what the answer is, but if Matt Campbell clearly OP and needs to be dealt with. um, but the Alpine did undergo a sort of engine change as a precautionary measure due to the car braking during qualifying. Perhaps not super surprising. And that would set the stage for the race. Which, speaking of which,
It's funny because, like, I made a joke, like, earlier, because I'm like, I wish BOP applied to drivers. Like, you could just, like, either, like, make them stronger or make them weaker. Like,
yeah,
you made
exactly.
it.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how intensive like weight and stuff are in wet, because I know drivers have weight and stuff in F1. So I don't know. Be like, okay, well, you can only have, I don't know, XYZ% muscle mass or something for every percent of body fat. I don't know how you do that, but it would be amusing to try, because Matt is just nuts in that car, frankly.
I mean, it'd be unethical, I guess.
Well, it would be. But that's never stopped the FIA before. Let's point out.
Now the race.
Yes.
The absolute chaos. The absolute shit show that was 6 hours of Spa. Or rather, I should say 7 hours of Spa.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it ended up being, we got a little bit more than was initially advertised. But yeah, so the funny enough is that, I guess the customary question is, good race or no?
I mean, as chaotic as it was, I'm like, yeah, I think it was a good race. I mean, I love chaos, so I'm like, I was happy.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I enjoyed the race. I was at work and I actually did tune in for this. But yes, I thought it was a fun, and yeah, it was just a wacky, ridiculous race. It's funny. The starts is usually what's the problem at Spa, but it wasn't this year. The start was actually pretty civilized, and I was like, huh, okay. Yeah, well, we got our money's worth not too long after. Not too long after that, because the number 46 BMW, which is that's Valentino Rossi's team, if I remember correctly. And the number 38 Team Yoda Porsche had a coming together and DNF'd. The Porsche apparently got a bit of assistance from Rene Rast in the BMW, which then sent him into the GT3 BMW rather.
Renee Ross needs to be put on a watch list, I swear.
Yes, he absolutely does. And to be fair, the number 20 was penalized for this. But yeah, it's just like, good God. Although funny enough, Proton actually, this was today, and I guess foreshadowing, today turned out to be kind of a banner day for the customer, Porsche. But the number 5 Porsche Penske ate it and hit a wall, which was not great. But now we get to the juicy stuff. There was an almighty accident between the number 31 BMW LM GT3, so that's the Team WRT car, if I'm recalling correctly, and well, the only Cadillac that runs around in WEC, with about an hour and 45, hour and 44 left in the race. Earl Bamber was ostensibly doing Earl Bamber things and was effectively trying to fit a Cadillac where there was absolutely not space for a Cadillac. And so as a result of that, the Cadillac clipped the back of the Proton Porsche and then hit the barriers, and then the number 31 was effectively just a bystander in all of this. And it was just, I mean, in the notes, and this could not possibly be more true, but in the notes, JT listed it as, quotes, a shower of carbon fiber and car parts. And that was absolutely correct. Like, you just see this explosion of like the front end of the Cadillac when it goes into the barriers. It's like, good Lord. This year just seems to be apparently a big year for like Cadillacs having massive incidents.
Or at least at Spa. I mean, last year Cadillac also had a terrible crash at Spa. It was just not at the Kimmel Straight. It was at Rouge.
Well, yeah. Yeah, but I say that because, of course, Pippa's massive accident at
Sebring.
Sebring, yes, thank you. My brain briefly broke there. But yeah, it's just like jumping. Jack Flash it was a gigantic accident. Now, everybody was okay. Everybody got out of the car and did so under their own power. I'm pretty sure a few were looked at in medical center just as precautionary checks. But everybody's good. However, Earl correctly copped a 5-place grid penalty for the incident, which applies for the next race, so Le Mans. And interestingly enough, this applies specifically to Earl, which then begs, how do they police that?
I mean, it's basically just like it applies specifically to him, meaning that it's whatever the next race he shows up at. So, like, if he happens to not be at Le Mans for whatever reason, because I don't know, maybe he still has symptoms, like concussive symptoms from like the accident or whatever, then the Cadillac won't get penalized.
Mm-hmm.
They won't have a penalty. They'll start as wherever they start, however they qualify. If he's at Le Mans, though, then yeah, they will get the grid penalty.
Okay. Yeah, because I was like, that's interesting. You hear, penalties being applied to, individual cars and teams, like, but just Earl? I mean, again, it's completely warranted given the act of terrorism that he committed trying to shoot that gap. Like, I'm not upset about it. It's just like, how does that work? Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. But at any rate, the race was brought to a grinding halt. There was a safety car period for a little bit, and then they decided to just red flag the thing entirely because there was probably enough debris on circuit to build a whole nother race car. And then the barriers were very badly damaged and needed repair and replacing. Um,
It's crazy because there were also people sitting on like the hillside, right, like where it happened, and I'm like, it was almost kind of similar to Sebring. Like these people were kind of, I mean, luckily I've seen it a bunch of times from like a bunch of different angles, but like the debris doesn't actually go like anywhere near like the people sitting on the hillside. Luckily, but I'm like, it looked like they were pretty close to being in a Final Destination scene again.
yeah, it is. The cool thing is because of where this was, yeah, the hillside. I mean, they're elevated. Now, granted, when you talk about three cars having a gigantic accident at what probably has to be at that section of circuit, I mean, you're talking 230, 240 clicks. It wouldn't take much for a piece of carbon to get some speed and some elevation. But certainly being a little bit higher up there, a bit safer than those goofballs that are at Sebring. That is wild. It's like, hey, yo. Um, but but like I said, it doesn't take much for carbon fiber to like I said, gain some elevation and hit somebody. So yes, thankfully spectators are okay, drivers were okay. Just some cars that were broken, but it's just gigantic, gigantic accident. Um, but at any rate, race control had a little bit of a conundrum on their hands and quite how to handle this. Do they let the clock wind down to fix it and just, okay, well, we've been here for 6 hours and damn it, we are going home at the end of the 6 hours? Or if we basically re-rack it and go again, and they ostensibly chose the latter. So they reset the clock to 1 hour and 44 minutes, which was effectively the time of the accident. And racing is resumed. So the 6 hours of Spa ostensibly became the 7 hours of Spa.
I mean, second time this year that an endurance race has had some type of discrepancy with timing, but I mean, it's only happened twice, but it's still bizarre it happened twice.
I was about to say, if I had a nickel for every time that this has happened, I would only have 2 nickels, but it's really weird. It's happened twice. Yeah, it's very funny.
I don't know, and I had some fear, like, because initially I was like, okay, as the time like went down, I'm like, but there was like 15, 20 minutes left on the clock, and I'm like, oh, they're gonna restart it. You can restart it, and I'm like, yeah, but I'm like, I don't know if that's a good idea or not to restart the race with that much time left on the clock, because like really what I was concerned about was like, okay, basically it's essentially a sprint. I mean, like a legit sprint. And it's like you do that and then you're gonna have like basically like, okay, 15, 20 minutes left on the clock, everybody haul ass. And then there's another like sport ending, career ending accident like the one we just saw. It's like that was what I was afraid of happening, but luckily they just did it like an hour and 40 minutes. I'm like, okay, that's
Yeah, exactly. It was yeah. Basically we were gonna get the WEC version of a green white checkered.
basically that's what it was.
Uh huh. And then yes, and I mean we've seen what happens. You're talking about coldish tires, folks trying to haul to get any scrap of track position they can, and then yes, you have an even bigger shower of carbon fiber and cooling components potentially, and yeah, that's no bueno. Uh, Suffice it to say, but good sense prevailed, and we did not get that. Um, I think that this was a fabulous thing to do. You know, Spa has already kind of gotten put under the microscope for that utterly farcical. Was that 2021 or 2022 when they just ran behind the safety car in F1 for an hour and a half?
I'm pretty sure it was 21.
Yeah. So point is that this circuit has been under the microscope a few times for sort of race procedures. And it would have been, I mean, I would have been here for the absolute meltdown that like motorsports Twitter would have had, but it would not have been a good look for another marquee race at Spa to be sullied, to put it politely, by shenanigans with timing and racing. So yeah, this was absolutely fabulous, and certainly to your point, yeah, there's nothing in the rule book that says they can't extend the race, so just go ahead.
No, just put an asterisk and write it in.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, so basically, like I said, they re-racked it. We reset the clock back to the minute 44. Teams were allowed tire changes because of just the sheer amount of debris on the straight. It would have been silly not to. I wouldn't imagine that there weren't any cars that didn't have some carbon fiber in their tires. And this did, as a result, this kind of scrambled up strategies because Ferrari was very not happy about the resetting of the race, which was very funny. The number 15 BMW got a 30-second stop go for blocking on the pit lane, where it's like, congratulations, you goofballs. And then, well, we've talked about it before, but if they didn't have bad luck, they would have no luck at all. The Iron Dames unfortunately fell foul of some of their own pitch shenanigans. The crew dropped the cars before one of the tires were fully seated, which resulted in a slow stop. And then they got beat. They got beat out of the pits by one of the Mustangs, just to get annihilated by one of the Toyotas, which is like fabulous. But all of this resulted in a Team Yoda Porsche win, and it is the first privateer team to win in overall victory in hypercar, which is super duper cool. And actually, it's funny we talk about it because that had our boy Callum behind the wheel, if I remember correctly. Yeah. So so win there. The number 91. This is the Mantai EMA team. Won in LMGT3. It's funny. Ferrari was big mad. Of course, the team was so angry about the decision to restart the race, and so they submitted a protest, and it was very promptly thrown out. Mainly because a steward's decision cannot be the subject of a protest, which is on it's Article 31, Section 2, Subsection 1 of the FIA International Sporting Code. And pardon me, see, I enjoy the legalese of the rule book, but I know a lot of folks don't, so allow me a moment. But basically, it says that competitors are reminded that they have the right to appeal certain decisions of the stewards in accordance with Article 7, Section 2, Subsection 6 of the WEC sporting regulations, and Article 15.1.5, Section 1, Subsection 5 of the FIA sporting code, and then Article 9, Sections 1 and 10, Subsections 1 on both of the FIA judicial and disciplinary rules within the applicable time limits. But the decisions of the stewards are taken independently of the FIA and are solely based on the relevant regulations, guidelines, and evidence presented, which is a whole lot of words to say, basically, that extenuating circumstances, deal with it effectively.
I mean, Ferrari just wasn't having a good weekend. They were just not having a good weekend.
Yeah, they're just a bit angry. It's okay. They'll get over it.
I mean, they'll be all right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. They will be all right. Um, but I think being angry about like the most extenuating of extenuating circumstances that could possibly happen in a WEC race, I think is just ridiculous. But
I mean, they were mainly mad because it messed up their strategy. Had they just ended the race, they would have been fine.
mhm.
But they chose to restart it. That messed up their strategy.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of what happens. And, much like we were talking about, I mean, to some extent, it jumbled up everybody's, whether, that was positively or negatively, of course, varies a bit strictly based on the team and even within the team. Pardon me, the car in question. But yeah, it's just, I don't know, whatever. But at any rate, for a little bit of news cycle things, because, well, we love news cycle things around here. Meyer Shank is potentially going to make their grand re-entry into IMSA with Acura again. I feel like we talked about this a little bit when there were murmurs of this. I don't know, a few weeks ago, a month ago. At this point, time is but a blur. Um, but a lot of why they basically got yeeted to their appalling IndyCar effort, frankly. Um, is because of the whole thing with the technical infringements with the 24 hours of Daytona last year and blah, blah, yada, yada. Acura wasn't having it because, I mean, we talked about it. Like Honda, well, it's HRC now. It was Honda Performance Development before, but it's HRC now. Basically self reported and all of that stuff, and they got in trouble. Um, And then that was largely why they basically lost the partnership ended with Acura, I guess more accurately. However, given that it sounds like Wayne Taylor Andretti is going to switch to Cadillac and in doing so pick up the Ganassi car. Um, and then also the Wayne Taylor, or rather the Andretti connection with GM in the very messy fight with Formula One, it all kind of makes sense, but then would basically leave Acura without any customers. So enter Meyer Shank again. Um, but but yes, so that's just very funny and vaguely ironic. And then there have been some updates to Le Mans entry list as of, I guess, about a week ago, as of the time of this recording. Felipe Drugovich, the boy who has basically been permanently sat on the sidelines for Aston Martin because, Lawrence doesn't want to kick his boy out of a seat, even though he absolutely should. So Drugovich is going to go race for Cadillac at Le Mans, which is random. Very random, but kind of fun. Again, I find it wild given that he's in Aston Martin's driver pool that he's not running a GT car. I realize Aston Martin doesn't have a formal factory effort anymore. We are well past the days of when they were partnering with a ProDrive for the DBR9 and the Vantage, but yeah, I don't know. It's like I said, it's weird, but I'm here for it. So there you go, I guess. um, but with that covers a very, very busy, very, very action-packed uh sports car weekend. Certainly on the
Yeah, and the deities above at Spa wanted their sacrifices in blood this weekend, clearly.
yeah, exactly. This is Spa Spock can be kind of wild and a bit rowdy, like anyway. But this year was just something else. Good lord. But at any rate, on the IMSA side, IMSA will be rolling into Detroit first weekend of June. And then on the WEC side, we do not reconvene until Le Mans, I do believe.
Yeah.
So, of course, we will cover those. I've just talked about it a little bit in some other episodes, and you've kind of heard this or will hear them as these all go out, as my wonderful little ADHD brain decides what order all of these episodes should go out in. But at any rate, pulling for media creds, with any luck, there could be some kind of fun stuff coming from me and coming from Victory Lane Vibes Twitter account at VL Vibes Podcast on Twitter and actually basically on all socials. Some fun stuff from the Detroit race weekend. So hopefully, if all goes according to plan, I will be doing that the first weekend of June. And then we will, of course, reconvene for further episodes on Open Wheel and sports cars. And then, of course, it is Emilia Romagna, which is not even its full name. It's very stupid. But that is this coming weekend, if I recall correctly. So that is another thing on the horizon. But with that, thank you so much for listening. We have been your hosts, Danny and JT. And until next time, everybody.